What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. Welcome to another episode of Three for the Money. Okay, happy Halloween, everybody. Back at it again with my main man, Stuckey from Lexington, Kentucky. All lines here presented by our friends, our partners at DraftKings. And, I was thinking whenever I start scrolling the schedule on like Monday or Tuesday and you're on ESPN.com and you go from like week 4 to week 6 and you start moving, you start realizing, God, it's season's flying by. Like we need to slow down. I start getting some anxiety, Stucky, because I'm like, God, can we pump the brakes a little bit? We're getting close. Like the college football playoffs, yeah, it's cool, but it also means we're close to ending the season. I started getting those feels this week when I looked at the schedule. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, that's the same for me whenever it's week 10, because it's like, wow, we're in the double digit weeks already. And that's when it really hits me. And it always seems to just come in a flash. And yeah, so cherish all of these weekends that we all yearn for when, it's June.
Well, one thing that definitely starts happening, I mean, hell, even in Scottsdale this morning, it was when I got in my car, it was 48 degrees. So the weather starts turning. And I think sometimes, you're dialed into this, but some of us, a little more casuals when it comes to just talking about the game, betting on the game. All of a sudden, you turn on the TV Sunday morning, you're like, this weather changes everything. And that's something you definitely have to keep an eye on. Some of these games at Philly, at Baltimore, maybe not this weekend specifically, but right when we turn Halloween, that's when we start, getting some of these curveballs back in some of these cities. Just big picture, any weather this week in any of these places in the Northeast that caught your eye? Because sometimes you start getting a big line. It's like an auto hammer the underdog sometimes if you're gonna have crappy weather.
Yeah, I mean, unders too, especially early in the week, they usually are going to get hit. Wind is the biggest thing. Rain doesn't matter as much. Snow, I actually like to look for snow overs. I call them snovers. If there's enough snow, got to bet it like really close to kick though. Like if there's like a coating on the field, like a significant coating, because usually what happens is the total comes down, but historically those games go over because the defense is just at such a disadvantage because they just don't have footing and you can't really get a pass rush. Brady's actually talked about that a lot. I mean, the Patriots their games used to fly over when there was snow. So you have like as long as there's not too much wind, there's enough snow, but not too much. It's a very fine line. You can't have like, you know, you can't have 8 inches on the field.
I remember Shady McCoy had a big game in the snow years ago on the Eagles.
Yep.
Might have been the
He
Bills.
was
Eagles
he
or the
yeah,
Bills.
he was great in that because he could cut and the defenses
Yeah.
just can't get their footing. So he was famous for that. But yeah, like wind unders, even against the close, they've historically done well. The key mark you're looking for is like 15 miles per hour, sustained winds. And then obviously if you have like really big gusts, that helps too, because it's going to impact the deep passing game. It's going to impact field goals. It's going to make coaches a little bit more conservative. If for this weekend, I mean, the one that sticks out to me the most is a bet I already made with the Packers plus 3.5. Get to fade outdoor pumpkin Goff. Jared Goff, just any type of conditions turns into a complete pumpkin. I saw him in practice yesterday he rolled his ankle. I think that he's trying to get out of this game. It's only one of two that he has to play outdoors. I'm kidding, but
You're talking MVP golf, Stucky.
yeah, I mean he's played every game indoors. They've also played a bunch of hurt defenses. No Jameson Williams, but if you look at historically, I mean Goff and Campbell just automatic against the spread. Like Goff is 60% against the spread in his career. Campbell 70% since he's got to Detroit. But if you split out indoors versus outdoors, Goff is 39-16 against the spread indoors, 71%, 34-34-1 outdoors. And for what it's worth, LaFleur at home has been very good. He's 28-16 against the spread, 6-1 as an underdog. Goff's touchdown to interception ratio goes from 3.8 touchdowns per interceptions to 1.8 when he's outdoors, drops by 2 full touchdowns. And that's all outdoor games. There's not always weather conditions. There's going to be wind. There's going to be rain. It's a slower track in Green Bay. So there is a lot of uncertainty with the quarterback situation, which is why the line is sitting here at 3.5. But Malik Willis has showed well. I mean, if you look at all quarterbacks, he leads the NFL in EPA plus completion percentage over expectation. Now he's only had, I think, 60, 65 dropbacks, but he's been good in every game that he's played. Even last week against Jacksonville, just led nothing but scoring drives in that game. LaFleur will have him ready, but it looks like Love thinks that he's going to play. We'll see. It could be just some gamesmanship in
He
such a
talked like it. I thought his quotes on Wednesday that like all signs point if he can move, he's playing.
yeah. But then is he hampered? But the thing is that this Detroit defense without Hutchinson is bad. I mean, they got torched by the Titans. The Titans haven't been able to move the ball on anybody. I mean, I know they won 52-14, but the Titans had 300 yards in the first half. Somehow they were down 28. Titans are a special team. Um, and I mean, Minnesota moved the ball. Their pressure rate's gone way down. Their explosive play rate's gone way up. So whatever quarterback is in there is going to have all day to throw. And this Detroit secondary is gettable, and it's just Goff outdoors. So I think that this is the top of the market on the lines. The line might tick up a bit. Like I would have Green Bay favored by a small amount if Love was fully healthy. And, early in the year, the market was like assuming it was like a touchdown difference between Love and Willis. I think that's been proven incorrect. I think so anything over a field goal, even if it is Willis, I still like. This line would obviously crash down if Love is in, which I think I'm going to say like 65-35 he's in. And it might tick up to like 4.5 if he's out. So, yeah, it's outdoor pumpkin golf in conditions.
So it's
like the
it's
Packers.
safe to say if LaFleur on Monday had just announced Malik Willis is going to start this week, Jordan Love is for sure out. This line's closer to 5 than where it sits now, 3.5, 4.5, 5. Or do
Yeah,
you think Malik Willis has shown enough? Because to me, when I saw this number, obviously you knew when you saw the number Jordan Love's in question. I mean, hell, he couldn't even finish the game on Sunday. This was the number one game that stood out. It's like, wait, Packers at home. I mean, Halfley has been a huge upgrade for them. You just watch them play. I mean, they just had games where they were like a joke the last couple of years with Joe Barry. And to me, it feels like they tackle better. Obviously, it's hard. I mean, they're playing Trevor Lawrence, who's turnover king. So he throws, I mean, just a horrendous pick backed up into his own end zone. He had another terrible fumble, but they have been creating turnovers. And the other thing is, listen, I don't care who you are. Coming into the year, you're like, wait, you trade for Malik Willis. What are you guys doing? This is insane. I think we talked about it. You're like, we just got to fit. And then you watch him play. You're like, fucking LaFleur. Who is this guy? Bill Walsh, what he did. Now, I actually kind of have faith because even one, they just won't try to, put too much on his shoulders. Jacobs is a stud. Malik can run. I think he's averaging over 8 yards a carry. And let's face it, their weapons, I mean, their tight end's a stud. All their receivers are pretty dynamic. Like they can just manipulate plays a little like Shanahan can do. It's like, okay, things aren't working, just throw some quick screens. Just get the ball in our hands behind the line of scrimmage, and we can gain yards that way. I just think this is an auto Packer hammer. Even, if Sunday comes and doesn't go your way, it's 100% the right bet. Because like you said, everyone is Lions just win 100-0 against the Titans. Their quarterback didn't even throw for 100 yards. I mean, that's got to be a statistical outlier in the history of the league. A team scores over 50 points with their quarterback throwing for in the 80s. Has that ever happened before?
I would highly doubt it. Yeah, I mean, also you have this. I mean, historically, if you look at teams that the previous week won by 35 plus in the NFL, fading them the next week, you're, about around 65% against the spread. Same thing as if you bet on a team that loses by 35 plus, very good bet usually the next week. But yeah, I mean, this line would probably be at 4.5. The other thing is if you get Willis, like the lines can be got by mobile quarterbacks, and Love probably wouldn't be at 100%. So I don't mind it either way. Just anything over a field goal is what I was looking for there.
Wouldn't you say this game's more important for Green Bay as well? They've already lost to Minnesota at home. So to have two home losses against two teams that obviously not just in your division, but I mean teams that can win your division, like that'd be a pretty big problem. If you told them at the beginning of the year you're going to lose multiple home divisional games and you're a Super Bowl contender or a division contender, like that's not something any coach or organization or fan base signs up for. So this is, to me, this game is much bigger for Green Bay than Detroit, especially like, okay, Detroit's, they'd have the same amount of losses if Detroit would lose. But one of their losses was on that freak Tampa game. They still control their own destiny of their home games in the division, right? And they've already gone on the road and won at Minnesota. So it would not be as big a deal, in my opinion, for Detroit losing this game.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it last week on like betting the Packers to win the division was the time to do it last week. I had a feeling that the Rams would beat the Vikings, and I bet the Jags, and the Packers ended up winning and not covering. So that was good for that bet. But you're right. This is a huge game for them because they then go into a bye week, but then they're at Chicago. Won't be an easy game. Home against presumably a healthier San Francisco team. Home against Miami, who's healthier now. Then at Detroit, at Seattle. Home against New Orleans, who's getting healthier. At Minnesota, and then you finish out the year with the Bears at home. So it's not an easy finish to the year. And then timing wise, you're getting a lot of these teams, things could change, but that look like they're going to be getting healthier.
Well,
So yeah, this is a big game
playing
for Green Bay.
Seattle with DK Metcalf or without DK Metcalf is a big deal.
Yeah,
Right?
and their defense too has been ravaged by, like, Detroit got to play Seattle when their defense was ravaged by injuries. They're probably going to be a lot healthier later in the year. So yeah, this is an important game for Green Bay. Looking forward to it. But yeah, Goff in conditions, usually he just turns into a completely different quarterback.
Another number that jumped out to me is Denver +9 at Baltimore. Obviously, Baltimore has kind of turned into a pumpkin in some of these second halves on defense, and these teams have been able to score on them. Clearly, Cleveland is just a completely different team. One thing I thought, just big picture on the Monday night game, is like Baltimore and Pittsburgh didn't get to play Cleveland when Deshaun Watson was playing. So, all four of those games, obviously Baltimore lost one, but both the games in Cleveland, you're going to get just a much more credible team, right? They're going to be a much tougher out, obviously defensively, and their passing game is completely different. I mean, that's aside from here, but Baltimore dropping that game, but it's like their pass defense is just a problem. And obviously Denver, I wouldn't exactly say is the Peyton Manning Denver offense, but one thing Bo Nix has shown is like he kind of heats up as the game goes on. Their defense is pretty good. I was not saying that they're going to win this game, but it's hard to feel comfortable with Baltimore. I mean, the injury status of some of their guys was, Wiggins was out last week, right? Humphrey's out. Are those guys playing this week?
Yeah, it looks like Humphrey and Wiggins will be back, which is important. I mean, the Ravens have been pretty unlucky on defense. Like, they have the most dropped interceptions. They had like 3 or 4 last week. And if you look who they played, like if you look at their schedule, they played Mahomes. They played the Raiders when they had Devontae. They played the Cowboys. So they played Dak, Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Jaden Daniels. And then they had to play the Browns with a competent quarterback. And then, they played the Bucks when they had their weapons until later in that game. So their schedule has, I mean, the opposing pass offenses that they faced has been about as difficult as anyone. They've also been extremely unlucky in penalties. If you look at judgment call penalties, things like PI, they've had 17 more than their opponents, which is an insane number. It's the most in the NFL by far. I like the Ravens first half. So Lamar Jackson, for what it's worth, in the first half of his career, he's the most profitable first half against the spread quarterback in NFL history. He's 54, 29, and 2, 65%, covering by over a field goal per game in the first half. As a favorite, he's even better, 46, 23, and 2, 67%, covering by 4 points per game. That's just a stupid number for one half football. And then when laying 6 or more, 11, 3, and 1 against the spread, close to 80%, covering by 5 points per game. Why is that? Well, Ravens usually have a pretty good game plan, and then it takes defenses a bit to get used to, his speed and getting those angles right, especially when he's playing non-divisional teams. Mentioned the Ravens should be healthier in the secondary. They And look, I look at and you can't run the ball in Baltimore. They're the number one run defense in the NFL. They did lose Michael Pierce, so the depth on the defensive line is a bit concerning, but it's a pass funnel defense. Am I and the Broncos have been good when they can get their run game going. Am I really concerned about Bo Nix and this Broncos offense exploiting Baltimore's pass defense? Not really. I mean, what you need is like an elite quarterback and good receivers. That's how you can really attack. There's like two really good receivers. You can attack this Ravens defense. And look, Bo Nix, you're right. For the full game, the Ravens have blown leads, and Bo Nix has been a garbage time merchant. I mean, if you break out his numbers, he's put up so much of his stats when the game is out of hand. Like, go back to that Chargers game. It was 21-0, and he led 3 scoring drives late in that game. If you just isolate Nix's early game numbers, and that includes a game against the Panthers, who have nothing on defense and were decimated. The Saints, who were decimated by injury and have nothing. And they got to play Bryce Young and Spencer Rattler the last 2 weeks. I mean, the Broncos' schedule, if you look, they opened the year with the Seahawks, and they played the Steelers and Justin Fields, been benched. The Broncos had the Bucks had a ton of defensive injuries, but then they played the Jets, who have not been good, but it was in a
torrential
windstorm and torrential downpour. Then they played the Raiders, the Chargers, the Broncos, and Panthers backups. Like their schedule of opposing offense, complete opposite end of the spectrum of the Ravens. This will be a shock to the system for their defense, which blitzes a ton.
Sean Payton even admitted it, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's kind of a joke. I wouldn't make too much of that game.
Yeah. So, yeah, he was like, yeah, we knew that we were, what was going to happen.
What do you think of your defense? He's like, yeah, it's hard to even tell against that offense. Like, can you imagine being a Carolina fan or a coach like that? And obviously he'll talk a little more shit than most, but still, that was pretty crazy, I thought.
Yeah. Insane. You don't usually see that in the NFL. But Nix, he minus 0.145 adjusted EPA per play in the first half. Only Deshaun Watson has been worse. And Nix has been even worse in the first quarter. So in the first half, he's been really bad. So yeah, Ravens have a propensity to blow leads. Nix has been good in in garbage time. So I wouldn't be surprised if they end up covering, but I like the Ravens off the loss at home against this Broncos defense. This could be a shock to the system, especially with Lamar's speed. And the Ravens offense is just rolling right now. Broncos blitz a ton. Lamar has been absolutely dominant against the blitz this season. So I like the Ravens first half there, but don't mind your Broncos play.
I do think, Baltimore, this is a game like no one takes Denver that seriously. Like they may make the 7th seed and everyone will bet against them in the first round. I think we're going to learn a lot about the Ravens because last year, which obviously they were better because their defense was so dominant. What do they win this game? 40-9. I mean, they would destroy these guys. And this is a spot like this is the Ravens team. If they are who I think we thought they were going to become the last couple of weeks, and then what happened with Jameis, that they win this game pretty handily. But I just don't trust them right now because their pass defense. But like you said, you bring up good points about the quarterbacks they've played. And Bo Nix, who I just saw today won the Offensive Rookie of the Month. I'm not quite sure how that happened, but I guess they don't factor in, fourth quarter hollow stats. And I'm not some Bo Nix hater, but he wouldn't have gotten my vote if they sent me a ballot. I know that. Yes. So yeah, this is a big moment for This is a bigger moment for Baltimore than it is for Denver. Obviously Denver the next couple of weeks. I mean, they're going to be huge underdogs against Baltimore. I mean, they are, and Kansas City. But this is a moment for Baltimore. It's like, okay, do we? Everyone was just like, God damn, is this team going to win the Super Bowl again? And it's just that team last year. Offensively, they're better right now, right? Andrews is healthy. Derrick Henry just brings them an element. Lamar even looks better. But that defense, I mean, that was why I had so much faith. I mean, what they did to the Niners going into that Chiefs game was like, this who's beating this team? And it's like when you have bad pass defense, even when you play random quarterbacks, it can bite you in the ass.
Yeah, no, for sure. But the Broncos just don't have a receiver that's going to take over the game. Yeah. And you go back to it you go back to the Ravens in this spot historically at home.
Dominated.
And it was similar to the Bills, right? The Bills hadn't played anybody and everyone was calling them the Super Bowl favorite, and they went into Baltimore and couldn't move the ball.
Yeah.
And you know, with a mobile quarterback, team that wants to run it, they didn't have a really dominant number one receiver. This game could end up going the same way, but the Ravens they just find ways to blow leads sometimes. So there certainly could be a backdoor here, but I like the Ravens to jump out early.
Okay, before we dive into Indy, Minnesota, another number that jumped out to me because I actually thought, we talk about all these shitty teams. I mean, Carolina is probably the most embarrassing team in recent memory because unlike that Hugh Jackson Browns team, who was legitimately trying to win, that Miami team, while Flores tried, they kind of tanked in terms of their roster, trading everybody. Like this team they have injuries, but they are desperately trying every week. Did you see the viral photo or video of them running a play? I think this was 2 weeks ago, like all slants, and every slant was like different timing. Like it was just like it was 4 or 5 wide. It was every guy was running a slant, and like they all broke at different times. Like when you watch a great offense, it's
Yeah.
all in sync. It was just like God, this is just they just stink. But so to me, the Jags are better than the Titans, are better than the Panthers, are better than the Patriots. But God, their quarterback, man, just every time it's like, they're playing pretty well. Then he just hits a dude in stride, or just the ball falls out of his hand. But this number to me is pretty big. And I understand Philly, like, is Philly just going to have like 3 straight games where they just blow people out? Now, clearly they're better, but this is a classic game at home. Like all of a sudden it's tied at half. You may hear a couple boos. I can just see it getting a little weird. To me, this is just kind of an auto bet over a touchdown. Is Philly that good where just you're playing a team that is capable? Now, Christian Kirk shatters his collarbone, which is a pretty big blow given that they were probably going to flip him for like a fourth round pick. And he's just a good player, so he helps their offense. But I just, this number plus 7.5, I don't know. It's pretty big. The little Doug Peterson revenge, fired. I don't know. That number jumped out to me.
Yeah, I can't play. Yeah, I need the injury report. I mean, you have the
They just traded
Jags.
a tackle.
Yeah, he hasn't started the last two games, but he hasn't played. But I think they knew that they were going to trade him. But his replacement, Little, isn't very good. The problem is you did trade your left tackle, so you downgraded there. Your two guards got hurt last week. They didn't practice on Wednesday. You could be down all three starting receivers. At the end of that game, the Jags were down five starters on offense.
Because Brian
Tank
Thomas got hurt.
Bigsby. Yeah, Brian Thomas. They need Brian Thomas here. Otherwise, you're down to Tim Jones
Okay,
and
I'm out. You talk me. I'm
Washington.
out. I'm out on that.
Yeah, so I like the injury situation on offense is really bad. They also play man at the highest rate in the league. Eagles, specifically AJ Brown
Their
with Jalen
defense their
Hurts.
defense stink. Their defense
Yeah,
stinks.
they did get they have Tyson Campbell back, who's really good. And he's their best corner, and without him, playing man was a fool's errand. But the Eagles have historically torched man. It's and it looks like their defense might be getting better under Fangio. It's a complex scheme. Looks like some of the young corners are starting to pick it up. And I thought, hey, look, I can't really take much from this because they played Deshaun Watson and then they played Daniel Jones without Andrew Thomas at left tackle. But they played well against Cincy. And granted, Cincy also lost its left tackle and didn't have T. Higgins. So, there is some noise in the numbers. But historically, Fangio's defenses take some time. Maybe they've hit that point where they've started to pick it up. But I can't play it yet. Taking the 7.5, I wouldn't blame you. But I need like at least one of the guards in, and then I need Thomas because if you're down three of your offensive linemen from 2 weeks ago, and all three starting wide receivers, even Tank Bigsby is banged up. That's tough.
I think it's crazy looking back that if LSU just had the level of defense that they have right now, I mean, that team should have won the national championship. I mean, they had Brian Thomas, Malik Neighbors, and Jaden Daniels. I mean, their defense was so shitty.
So bad, so
I,
bad.
I mean, can you imagine if they just had an average SEC defense? That team, how do they not? I mean, that's pretty crazy. It's why that I was like, Jaden's going to come back to earth. Look who he was throwing to. It's like, no, actually, he's just pretty sweet. and, and those guys come into the league. I mean, if you put Malik Neighbors on just a decent team, and obviously Brian Thomas is just every time you look up, you're like, God, this guy's sweet too. And listen, it's hard to top Jefferson Chase 1-2 college combination, but shit, that doesn't feel too far off.
Yeah, their losses last year, they gave up 45 to Florida State.
Ole Miss
Um,
scored like 50.
55. That game was 55-49. And then they lost to Alabama. So there are three teams that, top tier teams last year. And I mean, the Ole Miss game, they were up 14 in the fourth quarter. And they gave up a 90-yard touchdown drive in the final 2 minutes to lose that game. So yeah, just silly offense. If you're right, you're right. If they just had any semblance of a defense, they would have been scary. But
Crazy.
I mean, like you look at their scores, it's just their other games 72, 41, 34, 49. These are against SEC teams, 49, 48. They beat Army 62-0. Florida, they beat 52-35. Texas A&M, they beat 42-30. Like that
I
was a special
wonder,
offense.
like, obviously, I'm not trying to overreact to the first. These guys have long careers going, but like the hype and it had like an Andrew Luck, Trevor Lawrence feel. You didn't have a choice; you had to take them, and clearly they liked them. But like, I wonder right now if you just polled the 32 GMs, what quarterback would you take today for the next 10 years, Jaden Daniels or Caleb Williams? I would imagine it would be heavily in Jaden Daniels' favor, don't you think?
I agree. Yeah, and I definitely was not in that boat.
Me
I
either.
would
Me,
have taken
me either.
Caleb. Like there was some like I like you was like, look, he was playing. He had a really good offensive line too, like one of the best offensive lines.
He's got
He had
two
these
NFL tackles.
two first round draft picks at receiver, and his like pressure to sack numbers were pretty concerning. But he's so far, man, he's looked the part. I would think that as of right now, most would take Daniels over Caleb.
I said it even as the game, they weren't kicking field goals. Like, if you watch enough football and you're just watching the guy play, you're like, this guy's already one of the better players in the NFL. Like,
Yeah,
it's
and
pretty.
he more mobile, has more running ability than Caleb. I mean, Caleb is mobile and can run too, but not like Daniels. And that's the that's the
Well,
new wave
remember
here.
how raw? Remember how raw when Lamar first started, he was as a passer. Like what has done these last couple years, he is. It's crazy how much he's improved, and now he's just a dominant Hall of Fame player. But like this guy kind of came in. I don't think he's quite as dynamic as a runner as Lamar. I'll never forget. Like I think Lamar, maybe a bad Bengals team, had this just incredible run against the Bengals. Like his first couple starts, I was like, holy shit. Or it might have been his MVP year the next year, but it was just incredible. This guy throws it. Like I didn't realize he throws it this well. Like the throws over the middle, the stick throws. It's like, he's got a hose. Like it's just a tight spiral lasers.
Yeah, he is
Caleb's
way,
Caleb,
way more
Caleb's just
accurate.
you know shotgun blasts all over the place.
Daniels is exponentially more accurate and more polished as a passer than Lamar was when he first came in the league.
Okay, speaking about a guy that's not polished, Anthony Richardson, who is objectively terrible. I didn't see it till yesterday. The comments Ryan Kelly, who's I don't know, probably the Colts top 2 or 3 player on the team, their center, said, I mean, you never hear a player talk like, yeah, we had to sit him down and talk like this is not acceptable. So clearly, once that kind of video goes viral, separate from the numbers on the field, which were obviously awful, and throughout the entire season, it was like, there's no way this guy's going to start next week. Like I didn't know if they were going to do it like in perpetuity, like they ended up doing it, but it's like you can't. Jonathan Taylor, these guys are laying on the line, and this guy, it's like it's over for him. And they go to Flacco, who, let's face it, has had one of the craziest career resurrections in like the history of sports. It really, I mean, this guy was out of the NFL, and then the last couple of years when he was a backup, it was like this. What are we doing here? And now he's not just like he is easily. I mean, he ran circles around a guy making $230 million in the fourth overall pick, where you watch him take like two series. You're like, it's not even close, the gap between this guy and the guys he's replacing. I do wonder if Indy gets just a huge life bump of like, I wonder if a lot of guys look around because I saw it with Trey Lance. Now, Anthony Richardson's better than Trey Lance, but it's like their high end players didn't believe in him. And it's like Ryan Kelly, Jonathan Taylor, like these guys are trying to win every game. Why? Because they're like big time players and they plan on going to the playoffs. The Niners are a better version of the Colts team, but they looked around like, Kyle, we can't win with this guy. Like obviously Kyle turned on him, but I also think he was influenced by Debo Samuel, Trent Williams, Fred Warner. Like this guy ain't good enough, bro. And I do think that adds life when you think, like obviously Joe Flacco is like his numbers are probably better than he actually is. You know, is that you understand what I'm saying?
Yep.
Like people would not be lined up to sign this guy if he was a free agent to like some 1 year $25 million deal. But relative to what they're playing with, it is such a massive upgrade. Now Minnesota coming off the mini bye, that I mean losing your left tackle. I mean, holy shit, that's how good is that guy? I mean, that's a huge blow. I mean, he's a big reason Trent Williams held out. It's like, well, this is the best young left tackle. He's making 28. Trent's like, well, I need more than that guy. But that guy deserved every penny he got. And to lose him for the season, I mean, the backup immediately started getting shoved around by a rookie. So, like, the Colts personnel's not great. But the one thing I think every time that you watch them play, I would say over they are. It feels like they play really hard. Do you agree with that?
Yeah,
Like the defense relative to their talent.
sure.
I just think Indy +5 in this spot, kind of an auto hammer for me.
The one thing I don't get though is why announce that they're going to start Flacco? Flacco and Richardson are obviously very different quarterbacks. Your offense is completely different with Flacco. Why
Because it was
announce it?
because it was that bad. Like the locker room, it just they didn't even they
And you
couldn't
could
play
tell
the
your
game.
team, like
Yeah,
I don't,
but
I don't know.
but everyone would want to talk to Richardson. He doesn't even know what he's saying.
Yeah,
He
that's
still
true.
doesn't, I don't think, quite realize. Like every time you hear him talk, it's like I don't think he realize every single player, whether you're a 35-year-old retired guy or like a 58-year-old on TV, they've all reiterated the same thing. And yet you hear him talk, it's like, yeah, guys, I don't think he understands anything you guys are saying. Even Ryan Kelly was like, I I just don't think he gets it. So I don't think you had a choice to like
Yeah, you had to kind of
make.
end the circus
Yeah,
before it got started.
I think that was a big part of it. It wasn't one of those like, let's say they know all along Jordan Love has no chance to play this week and he's just playing it up. That's like there's no circus there. This thing, I mean, that's one of the crazier. It's weird because it's not that crazy when you think he just missed a play, but when you factor in, wait, your quarterback he never comes out. It is pretty nuts. I mean, it's unprecedented. It's literally never happened for a non-injury, right? It's like, wait, what happened? No, he's just gassed.
Yeah,
Especially now. I mean, how
why
many
say
running
that out
quarterbacks do we
loud?
have?
Why say that out loud though? Like you
Because he
just say
doesn't
like,
get
hey,
he
yeah,
doesn't get it. He doesn't get it.
stunning. Yeah, to your Flacco point, I mean, yeah, I think the hype is a little too much. And trust me, I'm a Ravens fan. I love Flacco, but he did most of his damage this year against the Jags secondary that was just completely decimated by injury. You know, he threw for close to 400 yards in that game
But
in a loss.
two of those touchdowns were late in the fourth quarter, right? And one was definitely a blown coverage where the guy was wide open.
Yep. You know, against Pitt, they were already up 14-0. He was 16 to 26 for 160 yards. Against the Titans, who thought Richardson was going to play, they weren't even preparing for Flacco. He was 22 of 38 for 189. It's a game they won by 3 on a late touchdown pass. So, you know, it's been one game where he's been really good. I you know, and the Colts this year, they're 7-1 against the spread. Like all their games are one possession. So they just find ways to cover. Their wins are over the Dolphins with a backup quarterback, the Steelers with now they're, you know, with a backup quarterback with Russ now starting, the Bears and the Titans. So, you know, but their losses have all been by one possession. What I like in this game, I like the Vikings first half, -3. Uh, Off 2 losses at home in prime time, one of the best home field advantages in the NFL with an
Yeah,
elite
this
coaching
is
staff.
Sunday night, huh?
Yeah, with an elite coaching staff. So, and here's the thing, the Colts, you're right, they play hard and they've gotten healthier on defense, but they play a very basic scheme. And when Gus Bradley does adjust, he doesn't really do it until the second half. Go back to the Green Bay game when they played Malik Willis. They apparently refused to adjust to the run. Green Bay almost set an NFL record in the first half for rushing yards. And then they finally, in the second half, brought more guys up into the box and added an extra defensive lineman. I don't know why they didn't adjust in the first half. I mean, it was insane. I think the Packers ran for like 300 yards in the first half. So you give O'Connell extra time to prepare here for a pretty basic defense. And it's not a defense that's going to blitz a lot, not a defense that's going to get a ton of pressure. So you don't have to worry as much about losing Darisaw, which I do think is big, especially for their season-long prospects. But the Vikings offense this year has been dominant early. And that's because O'Connell's script, which I think will be even better here. But if you look, Vikings been the best first quarter offense in the NFL. They've been great in the first half, but they're bottom third if you look EPA or success rate in the second half. Bottom third in the league. Even the Vikings defense is better in the first half because Flores usually has some good wrinkles and a good game plan as well. Vikings on the season are winning the first half by over a touchdown per game. They've only trailed once against Detroit, who seems to just have their number. And Johnson seems to have Flores' number if you look at their results last year too. Their other 6 games, you remove that Detroit game, they've led by an average of over 10 points per game. And then if you look, Colts in the first half, 27th in EPA per play on offense, 31st in success rate. They've only led at the half in 2 games. They didn't even lead at home against the Dolphins with their backup quarterback or the Packers with their backup quarterback. Bradley, like I said, slow to adjust. Vikings off 2 straight losses in prime time. Extra time prepare for a really good staff. Flores, going to bring the blitz, going to bring the exotic blitz. The Colts offense and Flacco specifically has been really, really, really bad against the blitz this year. So I think the Vikings jump out here. Wouldn't be surprised if the Colts end up covering, but I think this is a good spot for the Vikings in the first half.
One interesting game is, that Rams performance. I mean, they're just a different team when they have the 2 receivers and their defense. I mean, Jared Verse is really coming on. They're just like every year feel just solid and well coached as the season goes on. That line flipped. Right now it's Seattle at home getting 1.5. If you are a believer that this Rams team is coming and you look at their schedule, it's not crazy to look up and they're 6-4, but it's like, is this too good to be true, or Seattle just, are they seriously leaking oil? Even what's his name, Mike McDonald, they asked him about Halloween. He said, I dressed up for Bill Belichick one time for Halloween, but he probably wouldn't like that given how our defense is playing. And, this game used to be, it was weird. The NFC West matchups back when they had, Pete, Kyle, Sean, and Cliff would all have these like intermix, pretty cool little rival, like one team on the other team, but this team on that team. And I don't know if you kind of throw that out the window now, but this is a spot that I would say historically I would feel kind of good about Pete and that team, but I don't know right now. Seattle was, the apple of everyone's eye early in the season, but they clearly are leaking oil, and the Rams also, like Minnesota, coming off that little mini bye, are healthy now, and it's crazy. You just kind of forget because he's out of sight, out of mind how fucking good Puka Nacua is. I mean, he's a baller, and he just changes their team.
Yeah, this is you're right. I used to call it the circle of life in the NFC West. The Rams owned the Cardinals, who owned the 49ers. The Cardinals used to always, they did it again this year.
Yeah. Niners own
and the
the Rams.
49ers own the Rams, and the Rams also own the Seahawks, who also for a long time owned the 49ers. And like it was just all this circle of life in the NFC West. But that was me. I think that could change now because I'll be interested from a schematic perspective. I'm really looking forward to seeing McVay extra time to prepare here versus McDonald. One of the reasons the Rams just own the Seahawks is the Rams and McVay just cracked that outdated Pete defense, and it's a completely different defense now, much more modern defense. McVay talked a lot in the offseason about McDonald in this matchup, so I'm curious to see what he has up his sleeve, and I'm curious to see what McDonald has up his sleeve. Seattle, this is a good, on paper, it's a good bounce back spot for Seattle.
And these guys played them like, that those divisions crossover last year. So like Kyle had played McDonald, McVay, they played that epic game where Stafford was incredible, but they ended up fucking up the special teams. right? And lost in
Yep.
overtime.
Yep. So yeah, I'm very fascinated to watch just like the X's and O's of this game. But just on paper, it's like a great buy low spot on Seattle. They were thoroughly embarrassed last week. Every phase of the game. They had defenders fighting each other on the sideline. You had Gino getting unsportsmanlike
They calmed
penalties.
down though and made up about
They did.
5 minutes after
But
that.
yeah, but it was just a mess. Like the game just slipped away from them. I mean, they were on the goal line twice. Gino slips on 4th and goal. He trips on the center's foot. They have a snap over their Gino's head on the other time. So the game could have went a little differently, but they were just bad all around. Now, I expect their defense to be better. They got their top cornerback last week. Trey Brown, I don't know if he lost his job or if he's just not healthy, but he could be back their other corner. Got a good nickel. They added Ernest Jones at linebacker. They're getting healthier up front. So I think that their defense is going to start to trend back up. They were just crushed by injuries. Now, it's very difficult to stop this Rams offense, but just on paper, you would expect a bounce back from Seattle here. The key for me, and look, the Bills were just laying 3 in Seattle, and the market knew Metcalf wasn't going to play. And now we're getting up to like Rams -2. Like that's the Bills are more than a point. Yeah, they're probably in market, they're probably like 3 to 4 points better
Than the
than
Rams.
than the Rams. So we're getting, and you might get Metcalf back. For me, that's the key for me. I'll bet the Seahawks is a dog, +1.5, +2, if I know Metcalf's going to play. Now, is it going to be 100%? That's the tricky part. The Seahawks need Metcalf. Not only, I think he has the most or second most 20+ yard catches on the season. So he adds that explosive element, but he also takes the top off the defense, clears everything up underneath, and opens up the entire offense. Without him, then you don't really have that explosive element. The guys have to, trying to fill that number 1 role, and then your 3 is way down, and the whole offense is just a lost operation. So I have to wait on the Metcalf news. If Metcalf doesn't play, it's hard for me to see Seattle keeping up. So just on principle, I would stay away. But the Seattle also could get George Fant back at right tackle. I don't think Lucas is ready, even though his window opened off the IR. Their right tackle position has been a disaster. They're down to like their 4th string right now. So getting Fant at least will help put a Band-Aid there for now. So yeah, I think this is a good buy low, sell high spot on Seattle, just philosophically. But for me, it comes down to Metcalf. Need
Well,
more information.
that to me is the other game is like, everyone's kind of riding high Arizona. Everyone's down on Chicago because of the last play. Now, the thing with Arizona, 2 of their 4 wins, at least I know off the top of my head, right, have been double digits in the second half comebacks.
And win
So
by 1. They've won by 1,
and the Charger
2,
game.
and 1. And they probably should have lost all 3. They're down by double digits to the 49ers. Their kicker gets hurt. Down double digits to the Dolphins, who snap it over their head for a safety when they were in control of that game. Flips the whole game. Against the Chargers, they recovered all 3 key fumbles in that game. Come back to win. They even had like a fumble through the end zone. There was a touchback. The Chargers had one. They've been getting very fortunate.
And it's 3rd and 10 when they drove to win the game and they got that personal foul call that was pretty iffy.
Yes.
That easily could have been a turnover on down situation because they don't complete that. All of a sudden, it's just the game's over. But I am fascinated. Like the Bears, their coaching staff is struggling,
Bad.
right?
It's
I mean,
bad.
you watch Shane Waldron, it's bad. Clearly, that the last couple of moments, the last moment, is it Eberflus's fault that Stevenson's taunting? No, but clearly, like, is he doing that against a high end coach? Like, that would just never be tolerated. But it's the play before where they just gave up 15 yards and put them into position. Even Belichick's talked about that. Like, McCourty talked about that on the Sunday night game. He's like, that was a big deal with us. We would play defense on that one to not allow those free 10, 15 yards to give them an opportunity. You got to take that away. What are they going to do? Score a touchdown from 70 yards? Probably not. So you can be a little aggressive. But I don't know. Like, to me, Chicago, I just don't have much trust. Now, yesterday, as of Wednesday, Sweat didn't practice, and he looked awesome in that game. Maybe it's just a rest day for a veteran guy, but if there is some injury issue there, that'd be a little scary. I don't know, man. I just this is to me their season's kind of on the line if you're the Bears. When you look at their schedule, if they want to compete for a wild card spot, they were to lose this game. Like I'm sorry, you're not sniffing the playoffs. You win this game, your record, you have a couple upsets in your division. You could get to 9 or 10 wins, but you lose this. I do think with the coaching staff, it could kind of unravel on them a little bit. I don't
Well,
really have a take. Like I would lean Arizona, but that's like, do I trust them? I mean, this is a stay away. I just want to watch this game. I think this is a massive spot for the Bears to kind of show. Like, do you guys have any metal to you? Do you have any fucking like? Are you guys gonna bounce back, or is just that one play by Jaden gonna derail your season? Because I do think that's a possibility here. That they just all of a sudden were like, wait, the Bears end up going 7-10 with that much talent. Yeah, their coaching staff sucks.
yeah, and you mentioned the division. It's the toughest division in the NFL.
Well, they
They have
haven't
all
played a divisional
six.
game,
Yeah,
right?
they have all six division games left. Where you mentioned the coaching, all of those teams have elite coaching staff, so they're going to be at a major disadvantage there. They also go to San Fran
Loss.
and they play Seattle. So these next 2 weeks they're at Arizona, they're home against New England because after that it's your six division games. Seattle.
I'm giving them the New England win. I'll just give them that at home. To me, this is like after losing that game,
Yeah,
which
I'm
you
saying you
shouldn't have
need
won.
both. Like assuming that
Yeah.
they beat New England, like you need both. You need to get to uh what they're 4-3 now. They need to get to 6-3 here. Because if they're 5-4 after the New England game, assuming they win that, I don't think they can get there with their schedule. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Arizona's a hard team to figure out. They're just like kind of like a gnat that doesn't go away.
They're like
But
a
they've definitely
series to
been,
series team.
yeah, they've definitely been fortunate. I will say they started using Harrison well. They optimally last week. They changed like they altered his routes. Like instead of just having him run go routes, they were you know putting him
Crossing
into the
routes.
middle of the field and crossers, and that really helped their offense and helped him get more involved. Yeah, I just don't know where the Bears, the other thing that they did, I don't know why teams don't do. They had Edwards, their linebacker. He looked like he was either spying or he was guarding the running back in man, and he
Wasted
just
a
sat
player.
there. It's waste. And you didn't blitz the Hail Mary, bring pressure, or drop 11 guys. Because if you just are bringing two or three, which you see, the offensive lineman can wash them out, and the quarterback can buy as much time as he possibly wants. So if you're not going to bring pressure and never spy, I mean, go back to that Auburn Alabama game. Never spy, but if you don't want to bring pressure, you're wasting all your guys. Then drop 11, bring in three other wide receivers instead of your defensive linemen, and put them all back there because you wasted four guys, and then you have another guy taunting the crowd. So you were playing, and you're supposed to have another guy. You're supposed to have a defender that goes back behind
Well, it
the
was
where the
him.
receiver was. Yeah, it was supposed to be him. It was supposed to be him guard. And the best part is he came and tipped it after taunting, and he tips it right to the receiver. I mean, I've never seen karma work that fast in my life.
My theory was by the time he looked and they're beelining down the field, he then was discombobulated and he kind of freaks because he feels like he's just way late. He clearly didn't think the ball had been snapped yet, even though the Bears fans were all pointing like, bro, and that threw him off, which obviously led to him tipping it up, and he's supposed to be back there to either box him out or tip the ball down, and he's nowhere to be found. But like you said, they have the linebacker in the middle. To me, aren't you better off if you're not going to play a normal defense because you wouldn't because you'd have everyone cheating? You can still play a normal defense with 4 or 5 guys rushing the passer, and then the 6 guys back up against the line and behind the line, right? But like you said, with a mobile quarterback to rush a couple guys, like that's shooting fish in a barrel. For Jaden was like running around, no problem. They didn't even get close to him. It makes no sense. I
Yep,
mean, none. We have enough
insane.
evidence now, even if it is a very, very low percentage play, it takes a guy to screw up and it's still really hard. You have to get obviously very lucky. It is moronic football.
Absolutely asinine. This is, yeah, I don't have a strong feel in this game. Injury report for the Bears is big. They've been missing Brisker and Gordon in their secondary. They matter. Sweat, you mentioned, he matters. So you could be down three key defenders. Then their offensive line really banged up last week. Their whole left side of their offensive line, Jenkins and Jones, were hurt last week. Uh, they're questionable. Their backup left tackle and left guard are hurt as well. So, yeah, they could be down their entire left side and some depth pieces of their offensive line. Sweat, who is very important to that defense. And then can they get Brisker and Gordon back to boost that secondary? So, and just where are they at mentally? That's a question I can't answer. Like after that game, do they rally?
That's
Are
my
they
question.
deflated? I don't know. Do they discipline Stevenson too? I don't know. Like, do they bench him for a half or just fine him? I doubt that you can afford to, especially if you're without Brisker and Gordon. But there's got to be some accountability. Just if you're running a team for like, he was even taunting the crowd on the play before on that out route, and I completely agree with you. You got to take that away. Then
And
you're not even in
he was
position to
fucking
throw
with,
the
but
other
he
man.
was poking McLaurin in the eye, like he
You
was
got the
kind of out of the
unsportsman.
game.
Yeah, I mean,
My take was obviously Eberflus. He's one of the. I mean, he's a good player, right? You want him on the field. If you're Eberflus, you're just so focused on trying to win these games to keep your gig. If you're Ryan Poles and clearly not going anywhere, and it's about setting the tone. I mean, a lot of these guys are going to be on the team for the next couple years moving forward. Like you make him inactive this game. Like you set the tone. Like that will never be tolerated here.
yep,
Which a guy trying to win on a weekly basis, like he wouldn't be. If I was Eberflus, I wouldn't want. I just hey, listen. We'll talk to him. He starts, but if I'm Ryan Poles, like I have to show Swift playing his ass off. Like I have to show those guys. Like listen, guys, that is unacceptable. We were in a position to win because you guys never quit, and this guy's fucking around. Like that is not okay.
agreed.
You could argue that stuff. The Richardson stuff. He's 22. He's never played. It was embarrassing, but I don't even think he knows what's going on. Like this
Yeah,
guy knows what he's doing, and he's a really good player. Like if I'm Ryan Poles, he just doesn't play this week, and like it's a big picture thing. But I would imagine that would be an Eberflus would argue till he was blue in the face all week. They're like, no, we need this guy.
yeah, definitely misaligned incentives between the two. So, but yeah, it's just unacceptable.
Let's just hit on the massive college game. If you just go on the universal uh look at this season, really good teams playing other really good teams at home as a dog. Oregon won, Bama won, Tennessee won. So you're getting Penn State now. As of right now, their quarterback, who knows what's going to happen there, but the backup Bo actually kind of looked okay. Added a more athletic element, I would say, than Drew Aller, who's not a bad athlete, but I wouldn't really call him. All my friends from Philly, and you're from there too, were like, this guy's the next Josh Allen. You watch him like, I wouldn't go that far. From a movement standpoint, he definitely can move around a little bit. And he did in that USC game to extend some plays, but I wouldn't say he threatens you with his legs. Penn State getting a field goal plus. You talk about offensive line and shambles. I mean, Ohio State's offensive line is, I mean, what are they on their third tackle, right?
Yeah,
And
then
they
you had to
might,
kick. Then you had to kick out your left guard, the left tackle, and everything. The right side was already a major question mark. And last week, because of
uh,
that, they couldn't run the ball. Run game evaporated. Nebraska dominated them up front. And the same thing could happen with Penn State. Although one of their better edge rushers is highly questionable for this game. A lot of injury uncertainty for this game. The
but
Penn
isn't
State
Penn State pretty
offense,
deep defensively? I mean,
yeah,
he
they still have they
recruits.
still have they still have dudes. They should still win the the battle up front, and cause some problems for Ohio State, who, yeah, they just haven't looked the part this year when they've stepped up in class. Uh, there's the Penn State offense though leaves a lot to be desired,
I
and then
know.
there's the question like the
Coach,
explosiveness isn't there. The receivers, big game James, he never wins these games, and I think he's 1-9 against Ohio State. Although Ryan Day has not fared well in top five games recently. I think he's like 1-6 in his
7,
past
I think.
seven.
Yeah, or 1-6,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's so yeah. This game's hard for me to crack. Then you have the quarterback uncertainty. The thing is that there's so much value to like the having quarterback optionality and leveraging it in big games like Texas A&M did. Texas A&M when against LSU wasn't prepared for it. Marcel Reed, by the way, going back to that game, he started against Florida. Florida hadn't really seen him. he looked great. But the next 2 weeks against Bowling Green and Arkansas, they were expecting him. Didn't look as so hot. Saw that with Penn State, but Wisconsin wasn't ready for him. And then the offensive change. He might actually fit like what Kotelnicki wants to do more with his legs. But Aller is definitely way more talented. And Ohio State will be prepared for Bo. So I don't know. And then if Aller goes, is he fully healthy? There's a lot of uncertainty here. But Penn State also has their right tackle is questionable.
Isn't this game
But
bigger
you're
for
right,
Ohio
taking the
State, given that
points.
they've already
Yeah,
lost the game, and then if you were to lose in the championship game, I guess you wouldn't even get there, right?
they
With
wouldn't
two
even get there.
losses,
It's gonna be Penn State.
which would be
Yeah,
better, right? Because you would avoid that third loss if you're Ohio State.
yeah, but I mean, depending on what happens elsewhere, like maybe Ohio State gets left out at 10
You
and
know,
2
the fucking
because
committee loves them.
they do. But like, that depends on what happens. Like, does Indiana? Well, because Ohio State would beat Indiana,
You'd think, but
but maybe not. But I'm saying if they were to get the 10 and 2, they would beat Indiana.
oh
But
yeah, yeah.
Ohio, yeah, that would be their. They would finally get a ranked win because Ohio State's wins this year: Nebraska by 4. They beat Iowa, Michigan State, Marshall, Western Michigan, and Akron. Like they don't have any good wins as of right now. They
And the
play
The
Purdue.
Michigan game won't be a good win.
Yep, they play Purdue, Northwestern, Michigan, and then that Indiana game. As long as Indiana keeps winning, that'll finally be their resume win. So you're right. I mean, if they beat Indiana, maybe it's better that they don't go to the Big Ten title because what will happen is Penn State and Oregon will have the head-to-head tiebreaker over them, and Penn State is not losing 2 more times, and I shouldn't say they're not, but very highly unlikely.
They
Penn
won't.
State's remaining schedule is Washington at home, Purdue at Minnesota, Maryland. So yeah, they're most likely out of the Big Ten title picture. They lose this game. A hard game for me to crack, but you're right. Like, there's just no elite teams this year. The parity at the top is extreme. So
Which is cool to me for the 12
I
team
like it.
playoff that any team
Yeah,
can
that's
win.
why you need the 12-team playoff with the NIL. Like it marries up well with the NIL, changing landscape with the transfer portal. It's going to kind of disperse the talent. These elite teams aren't going to be as deep or as elite as we've seen in the past. I mean, Kirby Smart's talked about this as well. So because of that, like if we were back in the BCS system right now, if the season ended today, I think the national championship would be Oregon, Penn State. Like, would anyone be satisfied with that? Oregon, Penn
No,
State? No.
no.
So you need an expanded field for this because there's going to be a handful of teams that are capable of winning the national title. There's also going to be higher upset potential because there's just not as big of separation between these teams in the top 25. So gun to my head, yeah, I'm taking the points with Penn
When do
State.
they go to neutral sites? Is the final four? They go to neutral sites in the first
So
couple
the
rounds. They're home games,
the
right?
first round's home games on the higher seed, and then it's
The top four get a bye if you win your conference.
top 4 get a bye, and then it's neutral sites after that.
Any other college games that you're hot on?
Um, let's look. I actually played Michigan for the first time this season against Oregon. I look the one I played Oregon last week against Illinois, and Oregon was 21-point favorite at home against Illinois. Michigan, a couple weeks before, they lost Illinois, but they were close 6-point favorites at Illinois. That assumes they're over a touchdown better. Home field difference is about a touchdown. So, like, if you look at Oregon was at home against Illinois laying 21, Michigan's at home now. Like, this is assuming that Illinois and Michigan are equal, this line. I don't agree. And the reason I played Oregon last week is Illinois did not match up well with them. Illinois cannot run the ball. The strength of the Oregon defense is in their secondary. Oregon's run defensive metrics, like they're outside the top 100 in a number of metrics. Part of that is Genty, but Purdue was able to run all over them. Michigan could shorten this game, run the ball, limited possessions, and I think they can stay within the summer. The other thing, Oregon has no incentive to run this up. And we've seen it every week. Oregon gets a big lead and they shut it down. It's like stay healthy. They're already in the playoff. I mean, they're like I shouldn't say they're already in, but basically they're already in. They've already beat Ohio State. Their remaining schedule is Wisconsin, Maryland, and then Washington at home. I mean, and they can afford 2 losses.
I do think
So they had no
that
incentive.
Boise wins also aged pretty well, right? Boise probably be a
Yep.
playoff team.
But their run defense is suspect. The Michigan still has a really good D. The Oregon offense still lacks some explosiveness. So this is all out max effort for Michigan. I think they can stay in this number or get like a backdoor late because Oregon really does. They just don't care in the second half. Um, the scariest one, how about a team that hasn't covered all year versus a team that has covered every week? Air Force catching over 3 touchdowns against Army. I have to take this. I mean, if you look historically, service academies catching over 3 touchdowns are like 70% against the spread. Just silly. They know each other very well. They know how to defend the triple option. There's limited possessions. The games go so fast. It's so hard to cover as a big favorite, but they practice against the triple option every single week. Last year, in this exact spot, the roles were reversed. Air Force was undefeated and ranked. They were 7-0, and they were playing an Army team that was 2-5 that just lost to UMass at home. Game was in Air Force. Air Force was a 20-point favorite and got their doors blown off. I think they lost by 25. Now you have an Air Force team that's really bad. They've only won one game, taking on an Air Force team that's undefeated, ranked, and the roles are completely reversed. Air Force had this game circled. They've also their quarterback play's been so bad, but they had these two more mobile kids that are sophomores that they went to for one game, and the offense looked much better. They got hurt, but they should be back this week, and that's what they're going to go with, and it just adds juice to their triple option attack. So yeah, I Service Academy laying over 21 against another Service Academy is crazy. This line is 42 points different than what it was last year, same time, which is insane to think about. But I have to take it. I think a Service Academy's only been favored by over 21 against another Service Academy one time in the past 20 years. It was, I think, in like 20, that really good Navy team like 10 years ago, and they beat Army by like 3 or 4. I have to take a Service Academy catching over 3 touchdowns against another one.
Okay, I like it. Let's hammer Air Force and go America.
Let's do it.